When you look at gambling losses per capita around the world, New Zealand ranks 6th. On average, that's roughly $450 lost per adult every single year. But to understand where that money is actually going, you have to separate how many people are playing from how much they are actually spending. Take the NZ Lotteries Commission. About 59% of Kiwi adults buy a lotto, Powerball, or scratch ticket annually. It's the most common way New Zealanders gamble, yet it's not the industry's largest source of revenue. This glowing bar chart breaks down the spending. At the peak, you have gaming machines outside casinos, or Pokies, generating over $1.015 billion in losses. That dwarfs the $754 million from lotteries, $545 million from casinos, and $393 million from the TAB. The reason for this gap is the design. While buying a weekly lottery ticket is a one-off event, the continuous, high-frequency nature of a pokie machine leads to much larger financial losses per player. So, while buying a lotto ticket is highly visible and common, local pub pokies act as the true, quiet financial engine of the country's gambling economy. New Zealand uses a mandated community funding model, where a legal portion of those pokie profits is redistributed to fund local sports teams, arts programs, and community charities. This creates a dilemma. Does the visible benefit of these community grants actually outweigh the hidden societal damage caused by the gambling itself? The Ministry of Health measured that damage, calculating the domestic social cost of gambling harm at $4.219 billion for a single financial period. This disparity creates a systemic clash between public health and tax revenue that requires a strict cost-benefit analysis to decode. To evaluate whether this trade is a net positive for New Zealanders, we have to look past the raw revenue and see how economists translate human suffering into financial data.
The first pillar of a public health audit involves measuring direct economic inflows against tangible, out-of-pocket costs paid by the state. This high-angle view of the Las Vegas Strip shows the scale of those inflows. Integrated resorts attract international tourism and generate massive tax yields used to fund general public infrastructure. This comparison matrix shows the other side of that ledger. Tangible direct costs represent immediate expenses taxpayers cover to manage the fallout of gambling harm. This includes public funding for helplines and specialized counseling, plus justice system costs for processing secondary crimes. While the operators generate the revenue, the general taxpayer is effectively subsidizing the healthcare and legal fallout. The audit then looks beyond government budgets to the impact on local businesses, specifically through indirect productivity loss. Severe financial stress leads to drops in GDP. This happens through workplace absenteeism and presenteeism, where employees are physically present but unable to focus due to the distraction of gambling debt. Businesses also face employment disruption, bearing the cost to recruit and train replacements when staff are terminated due to gambling-related issues. Finally, the model accounts for intangible human costs. Because emotional distress doesn't come with a receipt, health economists use specific metrics to assign it a dollar value. This diagram shows quality-adjusted life years. A drop in someone's quality of life score equals one lost CALI, multiplied by a statistical life value to reach a final cost. This harm is then multiplied by 5 to 10 family members through the affected others metric. Most of that $4.2 billion social cost in New Zealand comes from these invisible productivity and family multipliers. The damage spreads far beyond the player to affect the broader community. The industry argues that responsible gambling frameworks are built specifically to mitigate these social costs. Regulated platforms are required to include tools like pre-commitment limits, unbypassable timeouts, and self-exclusion programs that allow players to legally ban themselves from venues. Operators also use AI behavioral tracking to monitor accounts for red flags, like chasing losses or erratic deposit patterns at unusual hours. The flaw is that these tools often act after the fact, intervening only once a player is already showing signs of dangerous financial behavior. High-risk pokie machines are disproportionately clustered in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, extracting wealth from communities that can least afford it. While these rules might mitigate extreme individual cases, they don't change the extractive business model that yields $1 billion in annual pokie losses. When you synthesize the full cost-benefit analysis, the gambling sector stops looking like a straightforward economic win. This quadrant chart maps the beneficiaries.
In the high-benefit, low-direct cost quadrant, we see the government tax yields and the mega resort operators who capture the revenue. Local community organizations also land here, as they have become almost entirely reliant on the mandated grant funding pipeline. But the losing side of the ledger tells a very different story. Lower-income communities occupy the high-cost quadrant, where localized wealth is systematically extracted by neighborhood machines. The general taxpayer joins them, bearing the multi-billion-dollar burden of public health and justice expenditures. We see the visible win of a community sports team getting pokie-funded jerseys, but we often miss the invisible, systemic socioeconomic drain occurring off the field. To accurately evaluate New Zealand's gambling sector, citizens must look beyond localized grants and recognize the $4 billion weight on public health.